Hello and welcome to episode 228 of Level Up Your Career, 60 minutes of live Q&A where your questions drive the show. I'm Shanice Mitchell-Cox and I'm your host for today. If you are watching on YouTube, you can find out more about what we do in our channel. So please give this video a like and subscribe to find out more about us. Ella and Blanche are in the social chat, so please let them know what your name and the city where you are joining from. They will post a link to vote up the questions that you would like answered the most, and of course, for you to add your own. If your question is selected, your name will appear in the credits at the end of the show. So get yours in early and stay with us to see that happen. Becoming an Agile Change Agent in 2024 involves fostering a mindset that wholeheartedly embraces adaptability, collaboration, and ongoing refinement. Being an Agile Change Agent demands a commitment to cultivating a culture of agility and guiding teams through the process. So how do we become an Agile Change Agent, and what does that look like in 2024? To help us figure this out, we have got a great panel ready to answer your questions. So let's jump straight in and meet them. Our first guest on today's show is Malini Jayaganesh. Malini is a highly experienced business relationship manager who specialises in nurturing high-performing PRMs and teams. She is regularly invited to deliver keynotes and presentations at professional and academic forums in Australia, USA, UK, and India. It is wonderful to have you on the show today, Malini.
Thank you very much for inviting me to be part of this wonderful panel. And I'm looking forward to the questions from all our viewers.
It's always so lovely to have you on the show. So thank you for coming back. And our second guest today, I'm delighted to welcome Richard Campbell. He is a Director, Product Engagement Lead at the Agile Business Consortium. Richard is responsible for developing and delivering the Agile Business Consortium's portfolio of products that advance business agility. Welcome to Level Up Your Career, Richard.
Thanks, Shanice. No, I'm looking forward to the talk too. I mean, change is the only progress we make is through change. But the question is, how do we avoid change for change's sake versus focusing on change that delivers real value? And I like to think we'll get to the bottom of that during these discussions.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for coming back on today's show. And it brings me great pleasure to welcome back Allan Kelly. Allan is a coach and consultant who specialises in Agile. Allan's main focus is on workflows, strategies, and products. It's wonderful to have you on the show again, Allan.
So thanks for having me back. And this is a great question, because if you think about the meaning of the word agile, it is change. The opposite of agile is static. So everything about agile is change, and that's something we're going to explore.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And it is fantastic to work with Wijnand again. Wijnand is a lead trainer at Capgemini with over 35 years experience in project management, consultancy, business analysis, change management, and agile methodologies. Wijnand has held diverse managerial roles in software development, large PMOs, healthcare, and government sectors. Welcome back to Level Up.
Thank you, Shanice, and I'm very pleased to be with such a knowledgeable panel here, and hope to contribute to some of the questions and make a little bit more clear about how to change and how to be agile.
Absolutely. We've got a great lineup of panelists today. And speaking of great lineup of panelists, I am delighted to welcome back David McCreery. David is a highly engaged in projects as a consultant, practitioner, coach, and mentor to project managers and project sponsors. His practical and controlled approach in difficult project situations has helped many project managers work through key project bottlenecks. Thanks for joining us today, David.
Great, and look, delighted to be here from snowy Dublin. So yeah, look, we've got a great crew here of characters to walk through this topic. So I'm really looking forward to it, and yeah, great.
Absolutely. And completing our incredible panel today is Adrian Pyne. Adrian is the Director of Consulting, Pyne Consulting Limited. Although partially retired, Adrian is the head of governance and trustee of My Melanoma, a new cancer research organisation. He is also an author of his new book, Agile Beyond IT. It's great to have you on the show, as always, Adrian.
Thanks very much. Now, the subject today, that this really incredibly capable panel from lots of different backgrounds, gives us lots of scope for exploring the different adaptations of agility, because it's long since moved beyond its sort of software development origins. So it'll be interesting to perhaps maybe dispel a few myths and correct a few things, and give us the opportunity to give a bit of guidance today, hopefully.
Absolutely. That's what Level Up is just about, isn't it? And Level Up would not be Level Up without our fantastic question master. And today I'm delighted to introduce our question master, Charlotte Miller, who joins us from the Thames Valley. How are you today, Charlotte?
I am absolutely outstanding. Today marks the start of the new 2024 Formula One season. So it's one of my favourite days of the year so far.
Oh, amazing. And we know what you're going to be doing this weekend. So can we take the first question, please, Charlotte?
You certainly may. Our first question for today is from Jenny Farrar. They ask, how should organisations be thinking about change with an agile perspective?
Wonderful. We're going to go to Allan and then Richard and Wijnand.
So the short answer is think about it as agile. Don't think of agile as a methodology you're trying to adopt. If agile is a methodology, it's a methodology that maximizes the return from digital tools. But really, agile is about change, as the name implies. And if you look at it closely, what agile is doing is building learning organizations. So you should constantly be learning and trying to improve and seeing what works and seeing what doesn't work and learning from that and trying to improve. So essentially, you take an agile approach to agile change. Start small, do something. It almost doesn't matter what, just do something, learn from it, do something else, and just keep going and just like a snowball, build that effect up. So work agile to be agile.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And Richard?
Building on that, I was just looking at the nature of the question, and I think the point being made here is within a normal operation, you've got certain degrees of freedom of change, and you can respond within normal operations to that degree of change. But there comes a point where the change is too radical for normal operations simply to cope. Even with a little bit of experimentation here and improvement there, you've actually got to break it out as its own change activity, as distinct from normal operations. And I think having a portfolio of things, of changes which fall into, they can do that within operations, or we need a special project to do this, and being more explicit and more intentional about how you're handling those different sorts of activity, I think is the key from an organization-wide perspective.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And Wijnand?
What I think, as I read the question, it's more about how management in the organization should think or should react to agile change. And one of the things that I've noticed within a lot of organizations is that the work floor in itself is really good at being agile, working in agile methodologies and adapting those methodologies to their way of working. The problem is that management is still working through traditionally, so they don't let the team be creative. They don't let the team be self-sufficient, so autonomous, if you will, and change the things that they need to change in the most creative and most effective and efficient way that they would want. No, the management is still governing on finances, real dates. Do I get what I want for the money? And they don't fit the organization to the agile working way of working. And that's, I think, is the most important element. Management needs to understand what agile means for an organization and act for it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And Adrian, if you'd like to jump in now.
Small organizations, it's easier to, in a sense, do what Allan was very excellently suggesting, and trying new things, or even within departments that have been allowed the freedom to say do some bit of experimentation. When you get into, however, change that's larger in scope and scale, and it's within larger organizations, really what, to an extent, Richard was saying, and certainly what Wijnand was saying, comes into play. The organization culture is then critical, because agility is killed completely by highly centralized organizations that don't trust, that don't empower, that have long decision change. They're all characteristics of agile killers. So if an organization says, we want to carry out change in an agile way, they have to create the landscape in which that can happen. And I've seen that happen even in organizations that haven't changed their overall business model, but saying, we're going to set things up, a modified governance environment in which you can do this change in an agile way. But it still requires that change of the organizational landscape to support agility. And if you don't have that supportive organizational landscape, then it's frankly not worth bothering, because it will fail.
Fantastic insight there, Adrian. Thank you so much. Malini, if you'd like to jump in now.
In any change, I think people are the main focus, right? And I think when we are looking at change with an agile perspective, the human dynamics, the human side of that change should be even more at the forefront. So, to pick up on what Adrian was saying and Wijnand was saying earlier, to be truly agile, we need to have a culture in which people organically feel, that they can make decisions, that they can actually try something. They shouldn't be afraid of failure and so on, right? So I think organizations really need to be thinking about how are they going to create this sort of environment for their people before they actually come up with methods and processes and all that sort of thing.
Absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much. And David, do you want to finish us off on this question?
Yeah, and it was people that were in my mind, and Malini hit it there. I think it's really important that the organization can tap into the people. They're the people who are experiencing the change, and the organization needs to see, how do we tap into the actual people that are experiencing the change, and how do we tap into the staff that know that changes are required. So it's not always top down. There is some top down required, perhaps, but it's about how do we tap into the people around the organization who know that their changes are necessary.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. That was great answers, panel. And Jenny, we hope that we've answered your question as you'd liked. Charlotte, can we jump to the next question, please?
Thanks, Shanice. Our next question is a live question from one of our viewers, Carrick Brown. Carrick asks, a change agent is an early adopter who promotes the conditions needed to buy into new ways of working. Is this the case? And if so, what are these conditions?
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Charlotte. We'll go to Allan and then Wijnand.
So I think the key thing in getting people to adopt a new way of working is for them to see the benefit, not just to the company bottom line, but to themselves. Nobody gets excited about changing to improve company performance. Well, maybe they do a little bit, but I always want to relate it to the people and the work they do. Is this change going to give them a better work-life balance? Is it going to make their work more fulfilling? Can they do a better job? So I think the conditions you want to bring about is relating the change you're talking about to the environment that people are in, and explaining to the people how this change that you're proposing can benefit them personally, because you want enthusiasm. I've seen plenty of cases, particularly in banks, where everyone's playing at this. They're going through the motions. There's a change department, and they're sending out memos and newsletters, and everyone's going, yeah. And it's just a game, and you can see it's going to fail. People have to want to change, so bring about the conditions where people want a better world.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Wijnand.
Yeah, so Allan, to tap into that, nobody likes to be changed except the baby with a full diaper, of course. Yeah, so No, change needs to be inherent. So the people that are going to work agile need to be open to it, and they need to be flexible. And I've seen so many organizations where software development was always going to be in a traditional way. We have defined everything that you need to build, so you just build it, you test it, and then it's going to be ready. Well, of course not. There are some conditions. The people need to be able to be flexible. They need to be able to be creative. They need to be able to take charge of their own work. Besides that, the business, where they get the requirements from, and then I'm going to stop talking about it because otherwise it's going to be much more lengthy. But the businesses where the requirements come from need to invest in working agile too with the solution development team. And I know this is only IT, and I know that probably Adrian will say we are going to go beyond IT. So take it away.
And on that note, Adrian.
Oh, what a fantastic cue. And thank you. Okay, well, I think there's kind of a couple of things here. First of all, the change management is something that's been around for an awful long time. And there are amazing gurus out there whose sort of words of wisdom have sustained the test of time. People like Kotter with the need to sustain the energy of change. People like Abrahamson, who basically says, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, as David was saying on the previous questions, build on what's good around the organization, or loads and loads of stuff. So I don't think we actually need to go anywhere near, what we do about change management. That's incredibly well tried and trusted. When we're talking about doing things in an agile way, it returns then to are change agents really early adopters? I think the question there is, what do we therefore mean by a change agent? And a change agent, for me, is either someone who is the leader of the change or has a specific role in facilitating the change. And that latter one can be at all sorts of different levels. They're doing part of they're involved in part of the journey and helping it to happen or making it happen. And then, of course, there's, if you like, the C-level, the board level. They are the leaders of change, and they're the ones who really have got to make it happen. And in Kotter's terms, sustain the energy of change.
Thank you so much. And Dave, do you want to jump in now?
So Adrian clearly mentioned Kotter to wind me up, because he probably knows I'm not a big fan of Kotter, okay? And the reason is because it feels like a top-down approach, and it starts with a top-down. And the condition I think we need for agile change is not so much a top-down, but a genuine interest in engaging with the people that are changing. And that's what we really need to see. So the condition is a genuine invitation to engage before all the decisions about what the change is going to be is made. And I think that's really, really key. And that's why, although there's something in Kotter, it needs a little bit of work, I think.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And Malini, would you like to finish us up on this question?
In terms of conditions, I think for any change, having an environment where there's psychological safety is really important, because people often, resist change because they're afraid, that they might make mistakes, or they don't know enough about, this new thing. And so when it comes to agile ways of working, I think this is even more important, because people not only have to learn, make the change, but they also have to get comfortable with not investing too much effort into making things absolutely perfect. In other words, they have to be really comfortable with, imperfection. If it's good enough, it's good enough. And so people actually need to, I think, have be in that really comfortable and safe space, where they can put something out, receive some constructive feedback, and then improve it and so on. So I think change agents can actually, to Adrian's point, I think they can be at any level of the organization. But I've seen people at quite lower levels of the organization who do a fantastic job of creating psychologically safe spaces for their teams.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Malini. That was a great answer. And we're just going to jump over to social now because there's lots of people online. So I just want to say hello to Carrick. Thank you for joining us today. It's lovely to see you in the audience. You're joining from Staffordshire in the UK, so lovely to see you. And Mark Rosner, coming in from Izmir in Turkey. Hello, thank you for joining us today. It's lovely to have you in the audience. And Zelini, lovely to see you joining us from South Africa today. How fantastic that we've got so many people from around the world joining in to level up today. So we're going to take our third question. So Charlotte, can we have our next question, please?
You certainly can, Shanice. Our third question is from a live viewer, Andrea. And Andrea asks, do you have some practical tips for involving time/resource pressurized operational business change agents in an agile change process, please?
What a great question. We will start with Dave and then head over to Adrian afterwards.
So look, we have to make some time. That's the bottom line. It does take us a little bit of time to consume, absorb what's going on. So we do need to put aside some time to look at what the changes are, to understand and to be able to understand how it's going to affect the teams. And if we don't give that little bit of thinking time, I think we're in trouble.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And Adrian?
Phrase trying to get quartz out of pint pots readily springs to mind. Very, very quick little story. Some years ago, I was asked to go and talk to the senior management team at London Business School. And they said, look, we're having problems. All of us are leaders and sponsors of particular change projects in the business school, and we're struggling. So I went along there thinking, surely these people at this fantastic business school know what project sponsorship means. Turns out they did. What they couldn't work out, or what they couldn't do, is how to actually successfully do their roles. And it really came down to a time thing. So what we spent a few months doing was working out how they were going to create the space so that they could fulfill their, if you like, day jobs and their change management responsibilities as well. And I won't go into the how we actually did it, but that's what we needed to do. And there was some reality there that needed to be sort of hit, that this wasn't something that could be done when already they were working 110% of their time. Changes had to be made.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that story as well. Wijnand, if you'd like to jump in.
Yeah, so the problem is that in operational business, people need to do everything in the operations, but 90% of everything that you do in operations is actually reiteration of things that you already know. Be aware that those things can be done by people that are not as expert level than the people who need to pull the cart for changing. So what you could do as a practical tip, because that's what you asked, just try to clear up a little bit of space for the SME, the subject matter expert, to include in the project for changing, and have somebody less experienced do some of the work that this subject matter expert already needs to do as something on the automatic pilot. So take that away, and you'll free up space for the ones that are actually pulling the cart for changing.
That's a fantastic tip. Thank you for sharing that. And we're going to jump to Allan next.
First one builds on what we've just said from Adrian and co. At the end of the day, we all have 24 hours in a day. At the end of the day, it's not a question of I don't have enough time. It's a question of it's not my priority. I've prioritized something else above this. Now, I'm prepared to try and work with people and talk it through and listen to them, because genuinely they have other things to do. I'm going to say if there's somebody who genuinely isn't making this a priority for you, don't waste your time. Let them be. Leave them. Go and spend your time where it can be more beneficial. Second piece of advice, when someone is time pressured, don't talk about Agile. Don't even talk about change. I hate the expression change management. Go and talk to them about what they're doing and just introduce them to some new ways of thinking. Go and rummage in your Agile toolbox and say to them, hey, I've got a technique here. It might help you with the problem you face here. And some way down the line, they may discover it's an Agile tool. But don't sell it as Agile. Say you're trying to help them and engage with the real problems they have on those other priorities.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And Richard, if you'd like to finish us off on this question.
I think it'd be very brief because I think Allan pretty much nailed it there, actually. I think that it's a very common problem where people feel they're being pulled in too many directions, as in they've got operational responsibilities, which exactly is what Adrian was referring to earlier, and yet they are being pulled in to work on this project. And it is really important. The leadership needs to establish priorities. And until it's clear where your priorities are, is it to bring about the change or to keep operations going? You shouldn't, it's really just stuck in the middle and you can't win. So I think clarity of purpose, of value, this is where you've got to get to first before you go in any direction.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, panel. They were some great answers. Charlotte, can we take our next question, please?
Thanks, Shanice. Our next question is from one of our panelists, Allan. Allan asks, I'm a manager of 2 teams and most of the team members are cynical about Agile. Ooh. But I'm told to make them Agile. How can I counter their cynicism?
Start us off with this question, please, Wijnand. That'd be great.
Yeah. So I already told that nobody likes to be changed. So I'm not going to repeat that one. But if you are told to make somebody Agile, you just simply can't. The only thing that you can do is show them how Agile will help them do their work better, easier, more efficiently, more effectively. Their cynicism can only be countered by showing that it isn't just a hype thing or whatever, but it can really work. But you all need to do that. So I understand, Allan, that you don't need my tips actually, but it is what it is. You can't make them less cynical about it. Just let them experience it and see if they will adopt your way of working or your vision.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Malini?
I think we have to approach them from a position of empathy and non-judgment. Try to understand why they're feeling the way they are. Have they had some prior experiences with Agile that hasn't worked really well? And to Allan's own point, for the previous question, we don't have to tell them that, we don't have to use the word Agile. We can just, start them on making some small changes, like being a bit more transparent with what they're doing, getting them together every day for to touch base and see how everyone's progressing with their pieces of work and so on. So there's small things small changes that we can make, and then they get in case they they have some legitimate concerns, you could probably address them by giving them an opportunity to try it out.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And Dave?
I think there's a few things in this. I kind of worry that the team might be cynical about anything, not just Agile. And I'd like to investigate that if I were him or her, to see where the cynicism comes from. I think that's my first thing. I do think that Allan's toolbox might be a useful thing to have, to try and get them. Because I think for a lot of us, although Agile is written in a book and there's a manifesto, etc. I mean, a lot of it's quite natural. A lot of it's quite sensible. And I think you can use just some sensible tools to show them the way. You can't ram Agile down anybody's throat because that's not the purpose. What you need to do is get a couple of tools that work And you know what? If people find out that they're agile, they're agile. If they decide that they're not agile, I mean, we had the long list and the short list many years ago, and it may actually replicate some of Scrum's sort of picture, or XP's picture. You don't have to call it that. You don't have to call it a backlog. So I think, get a couple of tools in use and do find out about the cynicism.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And Richard, if you'd like to jump in and finish this question off.
Yeah. In my experience, I think cynicism largely comes from contradictions in your lived experience. And I would suggest where the heart of the problem lies is the organization doesn't have a culture that is amenable to these new ways of working, because individual or significant proportion of people who work in that environment are finding, well, there's an incongruence between what I'm being asked to do and what the organization as a whole actually treats me like. And when you've got that, inevitably people are resistant to change. They're resistant to working in these new ways. So I think I would be looking to culture. And further than that, also, it depends very much on the nature of the things that the people are working. What's their domain? Now, if it is in the complex area, sort of referring to models like the Cynefin model, Agile may be the only approach which is actually going to make any progress at all. But if they're not in that space, then maybe Agile is unnecessary, and the cynicism may equally stem from that they're trying to apply it where it's not really needed. It's just maybe helpful.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And Charlotte, if we could take our next question, please.
Certainly can, Shanice. Our next question is a live question, and it's similarly related to the last one. Wahid Anwar asks, can we use Agile methodology for construction projects?
Ooh, fantastic. Thank you, Adrian, and then Dave.
Yes. Sorry, no. I suppose I better say it more. No, I'm going to answer the question very briefly with a question. What do you mean by agile methodology? Said right at the introduction that agility has been adapted in many different ways. If we're talking about it as a development method, then yeah, I mean, I've lectured or done workshops with the major projects association, and certainly things around design. I mean, you can't obviously build a bridge literally iteratively, but what you can do is the whole design and development sort of stages. You can certainly do that in an iterative way if we're talking about the development approach. However, if agility can move well beyond that. And in point of fact, you can recognize agile and lean ways of working for decades in agility. Delivering materials to site just in time has been going on for a long time. And if that isn't agility, I don't know what isn't. So the first thing I would say is be very, very clear what it is you want to achieve, and therefore what type of agile you're talking about, because there's not just one.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Dave, do you want to jump in here?
Yeah, look, I've had this conversation many different ways and many different times with lots of people. I think applying Agile to some of the hard construction can be quite hard. As Adrian has sort of pointed out already, it's very hard to pour concrete that hasn't been planned. But we have been using Agile in construction for many years. There's lots of things that have transferred. The toolbox talk at the beginning of the morning is a really good example. And just in time is another example. But I think the one that I think is deciding as late as possible. I think that's one of the things that we've been doing for a little while in construction. So build hard what we need to build hard, but allow us to be open depending on who the customer is. And that's actually how construction works. You build the skyscraper, but you don't have the tenant. So don't build for a non-existent tenant. Decide as late as possible what sort of tenant. Is that going to be a supermarket? Is it going to be an office? That's exactly what construction has been doing. Am I getting out the Scrum guide and going, hey guys, we all need to have this? I don't think so, but there's elements of Agile that actually there's elements of construction that have come into Agile and vice versa. I think the other thing is that then there has to be plans, and there has to be, around cabling. There has to be, there's compliance rules around that. But we can still organize some of the teams in an Agile way, definitely.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Allan?
No, you can't use extreme programming, probably can't use Scrum, probably can't use SAFe, but you can use Last Planner. And Last Planner is a methodology which we would recognize as Agile and is used in construction projects. Ultimately, underlying all these methods is Lean, and Toyota pioneered it, and it's everywhere today. And back to the toolbox, lots of those tools already mentioned, you can use in construction. I know people who worked on Heathrow Terminal 5 here, and I stopped seeing him so regularly because he had to be a morning stand-up meeting at 7 a.m. I've known people who work on oil rigs, and they go to stand-up meetings before they drill. And Heathrow Terminal 5, it's going back a few years now, but that was built on very lean principles, and it did actually open incrementally. People may have forgotten, but there's 3 buildings in Terminal 5, and they opened incrementally. The newspapers got hold of the story. Well, BA screwed up their move in, but in terms of opening it, the newspapers mistook a planned incremental opening for some kind of building failure, but it was always planned that way. So absolutely, just you've got to think a bit more.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And Wijnand?
Yeah, so of course, the Agile Manifesto says that it is for software development, but it's really nonsensical. Even software development you need to do on a firm foundation. Richard will agree with me, having DSDM as a basis for their methodology. If you don't have a firm foundation, you can't build anything. So for construction, it goes the same way, and Adrian said it correctly. Of course, the design you can do Agile, but don't call it maybe Agile. I think at least the last decision, decide as late as possible. Be aware that things are changing, and if you haven't created a design for it yet, it's the cheapest way of changing things. So it only costs money when you change it, when you have designed it. If you haven't designed it yet, you can just take the change away in your design. So sorry, but construction is always and has always been very agile in determining how it should have been done, even before it was called Agile.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, panel. They were great answers. And Wahid, I hope you have taken some valuable answers away from that. Now, we have got about 20 minutes left of answering questions. So please get your live questions in now so we can get you expert answers from these great panelists. Charlotte, on that note, can we take our next question, please?
You can, Shanice. And this is a live question from one of our viewers. Rebecca Jensen asks, as change gathers momentum, people will begin to identify other changes. How best do you handle this when those changes can't be actioned immediately?
Oh, what a great question, Rebecca. Thank you for driving the show today. Richard, if you could start us off in this question, please.
Well, I may actually start by sort of questioning the underlying premise of the question, but at any development in an agile way implies iteration. And you embark upon an iteration based upon those things which are of most value or as highest priority. And then when you go into the next iteration, you decide, it goes back to the points which were emphasized time and time again by previous questions here, that you decide as late as possible. So as you enter the next iteration, you say, what's the most valuable thing now? And these things change. If someone's come up with a great idea or a new recognition of value or circumstances change, respond to that. That's what being agile is all about. Reassess value continuously.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Allan?
I think if people identify more changes, you are on a winner. It's success that is valuable. You want to keep it rolling. The trick is, you see this most often in retrospectives. People come up with 20 great ideas. The truth is, if you try and do 20 new ideas, 20 changes this week, you won't do any of them. So I think you have to, in a manner that is clearly fair, whittle down that list and agree with your team, with the people you're working with, what you're going to do. And I would limit it to 1, 2, or at most 3. And those other things, by all means, write them down and post it, file it somewhere. But to be honest, I'm not that concerned. If they're good ideas and they're good ideas today and they're really good, people won't forget them. They'll remember them or they'll reinvent them. So by all means, soothe the feathers of somebody who's upset with their ideas and picked. But as long as you pick from the ideas you have fairly, I hope people would accept.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Dave?
Yeah, I just, maybe it's on Allan's point as well, is thinking about change capacity. I mean, there's a certain capacity for change in your organization that you're working. So it's really important that we work within the capacity for change, and that we make sure that those changes have actually been actioned and we've got feedback for those changes. So that's really key part of an agile approach, is that the changes have happened and we've got feedback. So great if there's more changes coming down the line, but the team need to understand what's their ability to take on those changes. And as sort of Allan sort of said, we can work out some form of a prioritization mechanism to take on these new changes. The fact of the matter is, a good organization is always changing, and we will have to action them over time.
Wonderful. Thank you. Adrian?
Okay, I'm going to put some context on this, which is the scope and scale of change that requires a project or program or even a portfolio wrapper around it. And in that case, you then got to go back to what the Agile Manifesto says about change. And it said you should embrace change. But you can't, that doesn't mean to say you can embrace any change. And certainly when it comes down to change that you're managing via projects and programs, there is, at the end of the day, whether you like it or not, there is a business case. And there is value that's got to be delivered from that change. And you must, and change has either got to at least maintain that value or preferably enhance it. Now, we had on the previous question about construction the idea of making decisions perhaps as late as possible, and that's great. And also change can come in at any time, early or late, even if it's, oh, I've identified this change, even if we're not going to do it for another 3 months or so. Doesn't really matter. But any change that does come in has to be evaluated in the project context. Is it something that's going to at least maintain the value of the project or preferably enhance it? It isn't, and it cannot be a free-for-all.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Adrian. Malini, if you'd like to finish us off on this question.
I think, I concur completely with what Dave and Adrian have just said. I used to work as the engagement and innovation business partner at the Department of Health and Human Services. And one of the challenges that I encountered with my role is simply because my role title said, innovation partner, people would come to me with great ideas all the time, or at least ideas that they thought were great, but not really in line with, the purpose of the organization or real value. And it's also not just about coming up with ideas. It is, okay, what do we do once we implement something? How do we actually make sure that, we are actually utilizing that change in the best possible way? I think we have to really manage people's expectations around that. It's not just about anybody can come up with ideas, but then what do you do with that?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, panelists. They were great answers. And Rebecca, we hope you enjoyed those answers. Charlotte, can we take our next question, please?
You certainly can, Shanice. Our 7th question for today is one from Matilda. And Matilda asks, I see many opportunities for improvement in my organization and wish to be an agile change agent. How can I go about getting such a role and making a difference?
Wonderful question, Matilda. Thank you so much. We'll start with David and then head over to Wijnand.
Yeah, I unfortunately, I don't really have an answer for this, because all I can say is you're going to have to talk to the people around you. You're going to have to see what the capacity for this is in your organization is. I mean, you need to talk to people around you and to see how interested they are in putting in a change process. I think we want everybody to have little acts of leadership in the organization. And I think this is your little act of leadership, is to go off and find support. And until you get support, I'm not sure where you're going to go with it. So that's I can't answer it bit.
Fantastic. Thank you, Wijnand.
I totally agree with David, because, it's all up to your organization. But I want to warn you a little bit. Not every change needs to be agile. So you don't have to be an agile change agent to initiate changes. The changes you see, you can, the improvements that you see in your organization, you can make that clear to your management and maybe to the highest management, and ask if they want to make a business case around it. And if you have a business case, then probably they will want to improve on it. And if they want to improve on it, then it might be that it is an agile change. But don't go out on the premise that everything that you do on changing is agile change.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Malini.
Matilda, something that one of my mentors told me years ago was that we don't need permission to do our jobs, right? So within the scope of your role, within your level of influence within the organization, if you can get some buy-in for, making some of these improvements, just go ahead and do it. It can be something really small, but if you get even a small run on the board, that can actually help you to have a conversation with your manager, like the others have suggested, and then gain some buy-in and support for bigger changes.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And Adrian?
Firstly, what David said. Secondly, an observation. I've been lucky enough to do peer reviews for several hundred project managers over the years. And when it comes to project professionals, one thing, and this is anecdotal, so this is not academic, but this is just with several hundred observations, that real project professionals are agile down to their boots. They behave in that way, even if they haven't a clue they're doing it. Because, I'll put it this way, no true project professional does more management than they need to. And the way in which they flex leadership styles, for example, is adaptive. They adapt, they flex everything. So another way of looking at this is take a look at the characteristics of agile behavior in the role that you do and see whether they may be applied. That can only be beneficial.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, panelists. They were great answers. And Charlotte, can we take our final question for today, please?
Carrick Brown. Business agility is about learning from previous iterations. How do we help leaders let go of their need to provide all of the answers up front?
This is a great question. We'll start with Wijnand and then go over to Adrian.
So, first of all, I don't think that the definition of business agility is learning from previous iterations. Every business needs to learn from any project and everything that you do within the business, whether it is good and successful or if it is a failure. And I don't want to be the trainer in this case, but business agility is about being flexible and reacting to change while you are working on it. And that is more agile when you are open to it. So your business management needs to be aware that changes happen throughout any project and anything that you are venturing. So if they are not open to change, they are going to be like the companies like Kodak and everything that are going bankrupt because they don't adapt to the organizations around them, and they don't adapt to the technical possibilities in the world. So if they are good management, they will automatically look at what is good and what is bad and adapt their vision and their strategy on it.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Adrian.
I'm going to address the sort of the question as opposed to the initial statement, which I'm not entirely with Carrick, and I know a lot of Carrick's writing, and he's really good writer on this subject. But how do we let leaders help leaders to let go? Well, in 2021, PA Consulting published 2 great articles which evidence that agile organizations are more profitable than non-agile ones. And they're not the only people, McKinsey, Gartner, loads and loads, vast amounts of effort. And when it comes down to senior leaders in organizations, the things that's going to make a difference to them is what's beneficial to their organizations and also to them personally. And so arguments like, well, actually, if you don't move your organization towards agility, then other people who are agile, other organizations who are agile, are going to nick your markets, and you'll be less profitable, and you won't exist anymore. And you only have to look at every single market, sector disruptor who, like Amazon, like Spotify, they don't define themselves by agility, but they've got agility built into them, like words through a stick of rock.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
Yeah, use the things that senior business leaders focus about all the time.
Fantastic answer. Thank you so much. And Allan?
This is in many ways the $64,000 question. But at the same time, let's not just blame leaders. I'm sure we would all like to know what's going to happen tonight. We'd all like to know what the inflation rate's going to be next month. We'd all like to know the outcome of the US election in November. We all do this. It's part of the human condition. We want a degree of certainty. So let's not just say managers, leaders are like this. We all do it. And perhaps reflect on where you're doing it yourself. And that might give you some insights. In my cynical moments, I kind of think our current generation of senior execs are never going to get it. A few of them will. A few of them will win. It's almost you people on the call. It's the next generation up who will get it. Now, I hate to sound cynical, so I can't go with that. As Adrian was just saying, some companies get this and they will succeed and they will accept the uncertainty. Other companies won't. And they will be outcompeted and they will leave. But no amount of rationale is going to get your CEO, no amount of McKinsey studies, no graphs. You need to relate this to them. You need to be able to go to them and say, look, remember last week we couldn't decide? Well, now the answer is clear. Things have changed. You need to find stories and examples where you can talk to those leaders about, it's dangerous to make a decision. And we don't have to decide for another week. Give them examples, give them stories.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And Richard?
Yeah, well, once again, there's great answers. I was certainly coming at it from the perspective, looking at the details of the question here, help leaders let go of their need to provide all the answers, as in getting away from this idea of the great man of history, where you've got people at the top of the tree saying, oh, here's my vision and the solution looks like this. Now go forth and build this thing. That is the antithesis of agility. And we know full well that the reality of the brilliant ideas is about empowering the hundreds of brilliant minds closest to the problem to come up with the right solutions in an iterative, learning, experimental model, not from some dictate from above. Now, unfortunately, some organizations still sit there. The top leaders think my influence is proportional to the size of my salary. Therefore, my brilliant idea is far better than those lower down. Now, we know that to be nonsense, but it's a cultural thing. It will change. Those companies that have those people will go out of business, more or less, I think, as Allan said, and we'll move on. And those who actually learn to leverage the brilliance of people close to the problem will thrive.
Fantastic answer. Thank you so much, Richard. And Malini?
I'd say ditto to everything that Richard has just said, because I was thinking exactly the same thing. What I would like to add to that is that I think leaders also need to get comfortable with, need to understand that we actually don't know what all the questions are upfront. How can we actually come up with all the answers upfront? This everything around us is constantly in a change of, in a state of change. And, they use the term VUCA to describe the environment that, we operate in: volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. So we actually don't have a complete list of questions that we can provide answers for in the first place.
Absolutely.
So the only way to do that is, through experimentation, we understand what the needs or what the problems are better.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And Dave, if you'd like to finish us off on the final question.
Yeah, this isn't fair because I need to get used to this fastest finger first, because everybody has said everything already, and I'm kind of going, sugar now. I've missed out on that one. But I suppose, just to reiterate, I mean, good leaders don't know all the answers. And they know they don't know all the answers, and they listen to people around them. And yes, we do have plenty of leaders who seem to pretend that they have the answers. But I have to say this: a good leader is about listening, it's about understanding, and it's about knowing that they don't know all the answers, and it's about the people around them. So, and I think there is a bit of thing that we want to have everything planned. Well, in actual fact, not having all the answers is actually a really good way to do some traditional risk management, because that can be a really smart way to say, right, there is uncertainty here, and we can deal with it as we go.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. There is a power in learning together, and I'm sure we learn that every single week at Level Up. So thank you for sharing your incredible answers, panel. Now we are going to work our way round and just get up some wrap-up comments from the panelists. So Richard, if we could start with you, please.
Well, I've learned so much on this session. As ever, it's a real privilege to speak with everyone and hear their responses. And I've been embarrassed with some of my own answers, actually, having then listened to some of my panelists had to say. So thank you very much for setting me right on so many issues. Great session.
Thank you so much, Richard. And if we can have your wrap-up answers, Dave, that would be great.
Well, look, it was a great session, and I'm going to thank Allan for reminding me of Last Planner, because I know somebody had sent it at me before, and I had actually forgotten about it. So yeah, I need to pick that one up and have a look at it again. I even know a company had sent it on to me the minute you said it. So look, there's a good little bit of a tool from his toolbox there. I have a little bit of learning to do over the weekend.
Perfect. Thank you so much, and thanks for joining us today. And Malini, if I could have your final comments, please.
Thank you again, for having me on this show. And if I had to stay awake till 2 a.m. to talk about all things Agile, I can't imagine a better group of people to do it with. So thank you, everyone.
And thank you for staying up till really, really late to participate and Level Up every time you join. We greatly appreciate having you on the panel. Allan, if I could have your final comments for today, please.
I'm sure many of the people here, many listeners are thinking, God, if only my boss would get it. How do I persuade my boss? And actually, the people at the top of the organization have the least power. You, the people listening, you have the most. You're on the ground. You're engaging with the problems. You're in a position to build coalitions. The people at the top of the organization are even more frustrated than you are, because they have so few levers to make change happen. Go for it.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And thanks for joining us today. Adrian, your final comments, please.
Well, I think I'm indebted to all the other sort of panel members for reminding me of the importance of the power of the story. So yeah, when you are trying to sort of persuade people, stories are a great way of doing that. So there we go.
Thank you so much, and thank you for your time for appearing on Level Up today. And Wijnand, can I have your final comments, please?
Yeah, so I thoroughly enjoyed it. I thought there were very good questions in the mix here, and I enjoyed to try and wrap my head around how people think and relate to things. I just want to remind you of one thing: we are people, all people, and one of the things we are worst at is at predicting the future, because we are living in the now. So don't try to predict the future. Just learn from the past and try not to make the same mistakes that you did in the past.
That's some great advice. Thank you so much. And thank you for sharing all your incredible insight today, panelists. What a great show today, Charlotte. How do you have any final comments?
It was just to echo what Wijnand has just said, a quote by David Kelly, fail often so that you can succeed sooner.
Oh, that's a great quote and great for us all to take something away from today. Thank you. And I would like to thank our producers for the excellent questions today, and watch out for your name in the credits if your question was selected. We've had so many viewers online today, and I'm sure we can all agree that learning is always better together. So if you could repost this episode to your LinkedIn, that would be fantastic, because it helps others find the show and it can help us build our growing community of learners. And over on our website, you can search for 2,200 answers to the questions that we've asked on Level Up. It's a free resource connecting you with your experts from all around the world. And don't forget, you can also listen to Level Up Your Career on the podcast platforms, your preferred podcast platforms. It's available every single week. So go ahead and search for Level Up Your Career with APMG. We have some incredible events coming up over the next few weeks. On Monday, the 4th of March, we will be focusing our effort on careers in service management. Join us at 8 a.m. GMT. And on Friday, the 8th of March at 2 o'clock GMT, we'll be discussing a very important topic of how to build a culture of inclusivity in 2024. And then on Monday, we will be discussing how to get hired and build your career in 2024. So that's one not to be missed. And that will be on the 11th of March at 8 a.m. GMT time. Sign up to never miss a show and head over to our YouTube channel. Give this video a like and subscribe. Thanks, everyone. See you next time.